I was actually a gambling addict myself, so I'm speaking from experience. And just like any other nation, we've also been battling with a heavy national debt, and we were actually the first country to default on a Eurobond. Gambling addiction does not discriminate anybody. It's a foreign topic. We're having divorces, people are losing jobs, the country is burdened with debt from a family level to a national level. The urge to gamble is more than the will to quit. I sold my piece of land and my husband doesn't even know it. And I will die with this secret.
It's Visa. Visa with the time. Slow Visa. It's Visa. It's Visa. It's Visa. Visa with the time. It's Visa. It's Visa. Africa, gone is tomorrow. Today is here. Achievement to be accomplished. Nothing to fear.
I would like to thank your organization for giving me this opportunity to showcase what I'm doing in my community and my country as a whole. It's not every day that you get an organization like yours, which is also part of the civic community, to push such an agenda. To introduce myself, my name is Renashe J. Magomise. I'm a brand consultant, I'm a gambling addiction advocate, and I'm a social media safety awareness advocate. For the past 2 years, I've been busy and heavily invested in raising awareness and education in my country, which is Zambia, when it comes to gambling addiction, because I've seen how it has affected the general population of this country. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I was actually a gambling addict myself, so I'm speaking from experience. I was a gambling addict for 4 years, from 2019 to 2022, until I hit rock bottom and I decided I needed to change. So basically, that's who I am. But most importantly, I'm a human being who is trying to make a change in the community that I live. You see, Zambia is a country, a beautiful country, by the way, with a population of 20 million, give or take, according to the latest statistics from the statistical office. And it comprises of a youthful population, but at the same time, we've had difficult challenges ever since COVID-19 came through. And just like any other nation, we've also been battling with a heavy national debt. And we were actually the first country to default on a Eurobond. And we've been experiencing a persistent period of drought, which has also resulted in us having challenges with electricity. And the reason why I'm mentioning all these things is because they contribute a lot to the reason why people are gambling. The people who are really gambling are people who are unemployed, people who are employed, people who are old, people who are young, people with a future, people who are married, people who are leaders in organizations. The reason why I'm saying this is because gambling addiction does not discriminate anybody. Now, the problem with that is there is the absence of a robust organization that is responsible for recording the data, which is important in analyzing how much of an effect it has caused in different communities. Because if you remember what I mentioned in one of my responses, I said it's a foreign topic at this point. Not a lot of people are familiar with the topic. So for them to record and actually say this is an issue, it will take a lot. But the effects of gambling addiction have been felt. How have they been felt? We're having divorces, people are losing jobs, the country is burdened with debt from a family level to a national level. All of this is attributed to gambling addiction in one way or the other. But what hurts the most is it's not being directly attributed to gambling as a problem. So that's where we are now as a country.
In your conversation, you mentioned that you grew up surrounded by love. So what initiated you in the first place to go into gambling?
First time that I got introduced to gambling, it was just simply for fun, entertainment through a couple of friends. Uh, at that point, I didn't know that a seed had actually been planted, a seed that was going to emotionally, financially, and even physically affect me for the next 4 years. But after being heavily invested in gambling addiction advocacy for the past 2 years, every story that I get, it's a carbon copy of what I went through. These are innocent people who get introduced to gambling, not knowing what they get themselves into, and they find themselves in a position where they can't control. The urge to gamble is more than the will to quit. So that's how I got into gambling. It was an innocent situation. I didn't even know that it was going to cost me this much.
Wow, the edge to gambling is more than the will. That's a closing statement from you, Jay.
Just interested in knowing the kind of gambling that goes on in Zambia, or the kind of gambling. I think there are different types of gambling in Ghana that I know of. So I don't know which kind of gambling that you are referring to, or which one you started with, and which one is prevalent.
Gambling, let me just give you a backdrop of gambling. It's one of the oldest professions in the world. It even existed way, way, way before we were even on this planet. Even in the Bible, it's actually mentioned together with prostitution. Funny as it sounds, it's actually true. The only difference is it evolved through time, but the biggest difference maker has been technology. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of my country, where I come from. I don't know about Ghana, but in Zambia, gambling has evolved from a brick and mortar position to a handheld device that you can access anytime. Gambling is actually in your pocket as you work, as you go home, as you travel, when you fly, wherever you are, you can actually access gambling services. Now, there are different forms of gambling. We have online sports betting, we have virtual games, we have online casinos, we have real sports where you can actually wager in real time. We also have dog racing, horse racing, bingo, we have blackjack. But the one that has been most damaging, prevalent in Zambia is actually sports betting and online casino games, especially one that I've actually experienced myself, which contributed a lot to my addiction, which was Wheels of Luck. It's just a simple game where you wager different amounts, you spin until your money is gone. Then there's also another one called Aviator. It's a little plane where you can wager different amounts and you just see your money flying into the horizon and poof, it's gone. The beauty of it is you can make a lot of money within a short period of time. But the nightmare side of it is you can lose a lot of money. And I think that's where most people miss it. Because in that excitement of making a lot of money, maybe more than your salary that you make per month, you can make it within 10 or 20 minutes, depending on your strategy or whatever that you use. But reality is there's always an edge to make sure that the house always wins at the end of the day, because you have to get back to the narrative that gambling companies promote even when they're talking about their products. They truly, truly come out and say gambling is meant for entertainment purposes. But the problem with my country is the narrative has changed. Instead of it being a source of entertainment, it has actually been established as a source of income. It's not a job, it's not empowerment, it's purely entertainment. So when you're trying to make money as a source of income, that's when you start chasing your losses. So sports betting, where you actually play, you wager maybe a little bit of money on Chelsea playing Manchester United or whatever it is. But the problem with that is you have to wait the whole 90 minutes. So people will be like, let me just try out online casinos where I can know my fate within 5 minutes. And that's where people lose it. So that's the most prevalent in my country.
what inspired you to go into gambling? I know you mentioned for fun, for entertainment, for friends, but would you also say that you trying to get a source of income from it also inspired you to keep on playing it?
Yeah, exactly. What we really have to understand is when you gamble and you win something, because gambling comes in different stages. But throughout the life cycle of a gambling addict, you usually identify 4 stages. The first stage is the winning stage, where you put in a bit of money and you be like, hey, this is actually a good way of making money. That's where the problem starts. If you take it as a way of making money instead of just having fun, that's where the problem starts. Because what will happen is when you lose, your brain produces different hormones. When you win, there's a thrill, a rush, adrenaline rush throughout your body, and that feeling is addictive. The kind of hormones that are produced, they're actually called dopamine. So when you constantly chase that dopamine, find yourself doing everything possible in your power to make sure that you have that feeling. So after the winning stage, you start losing, but you still convince yourself that I still got this, I can do it. And when you can't control it, it becomes desperation. That's when you start getting money from different people, becoming a pathological liar, doing everything possible in your power, even wasting money that you work for the whole month and lose it in 30 minutes. You don't even care. If you've got a family, if you have bills to pay and whatnot. Then the last stage is actually the hopeless stage, where every little money that you have, you're putting it straight into gambling. And this is actually motivated by the fact that you're not only trying to chase dopamine, but you're trying to recover the money that you lost throughout your entire cycle, which is not going to happen. It's a facade, it's a fallacy, and it speaks a lot to the naivety and gullibility of the general population in dealing with this issue. And I've experienced this problem with a lot of people who come to me now for help. I'm not a mental health expert, but I'm actually providing some of the solutions that worked for me. And one thing that people don't really want to accept is that money is not never going to come back. So to answer your question, I wouldn't say I was inspired by it, but I would say something triggered, because gambling addiction is all about triggers. Something triggered me into feeding into this addiction over and over again, even though I knew that the signs reflected that I'm supposed to stop. I lose 10 times, I win once, and I believe that this is actually changing for the better. I lose 30 times, I win once. I lose 100 times, I win once. So if you were to ask any person who is gambling for their balance sheet, how much money they're investing and actually how much money they're recouping, you'd find that there's a discrepancy, a huge discrepancy. So it's something that's like you look at, but you're not really breaking it down intellectually until you get to a point where you break down like I did. You're only faced with 2 choices. You either die or get worse, or you get better. I mean, both of the options, they take the same energy. So I chose the latter.
Can you give us like a fair idea of extents? Let's say gambling is very prevalent or it's prevalent in one province and where that province is located.
In Zambia, we have 10 provinces, okay? To give you just a rough idea of how many people have been affected, about 2 to 3 people amongst 10 youths, they're dealing with addiction.
I can see you have been making a lot of impact, as you mentioned. You have been speaking to a lot of people, doing advocacy. We want to quantify your impact. Can you tell us specifically how you have made impact to the life of other people? You have a total number of people you've been able to reach out to. You also mentioned online tools for advocacy. Can you be more specific on the impact?
Initially, when I started Fresh Start, the main objective was to disseminate as much information as possible. But what I identified with Zambia is the problem is that there are people who are addicted. But for you to get to a point where they can come out and say, I need help, it's actually a challenge itself. So gambling addiction right now is where mental health was 20 years ago in Zambia. It's swept under the rug, it's quickly dismissed, or it's misunderstood. So for us to have an impact, we need to create a platform from a family level, a household level, to a national level where we can embrace and actually accommodate these conversations in our circles and say, this is a difficult conversation that we want to have. Gambling addiction has affected our children, our husbands, our wives, and we need to deal with it. But if you tell someone, because in my case, when I came out and say, I'm actually struggling, one of the biggest problems that I had was trying to make people understand what I was going through, because nobody had ever experienced that in my family. So you get different kind of responses. One of them was, you're a man. Can you believe that? You're a man, you're not supposed to be losing money like that. That's stupidity. The other reason was, how do they even play this? How can you let this happen? You're educated. It has nothing to do with that. Addiction is addiction. The impact that I made really came to light when I had an interview, I think it was a month or two ago. It was actually a simple radio interview with one of the prominent figures in Zambia. And they actually put out my contact details, my email, my number, and everything. I thought that nobody was going to call, be interested in my topic. But up to date, within a short space of time, I think within 60 days, I've had to switch off my phone because I've had more than 500 texts and calls. I don't want to lie to you. That's too much for one person because I'm a one-man organization. I'm running the whole show. And I also have a family to feed. I also have some personal things that I want to do. But I don't want to leave everybody hanging. So what I did was I created a database to create schedules and appointments to talk to people and find out what is exactly the problem. But I also encourage them to join a community on WhatsApp that promotes privacy in the first place. And you wouldn't believe how many people signed up for that. In that group, I only have 3 people that I talk to on a daily basis. 3 people. But I wasn't discouraged because I knew that people want to deal with this privately. They don't want to be known that they're going through this. It's not that they don't want to get help. They just don't want people to know that I'm a gambling addict. Why? Because I've been married for 25 years. I sold my piece of land and my husband doesn't even know it. And I will die with this secret. I'll go to the grave with this secret. So you see where the problem is. If we don't deal with it, a lot of people are going to die. If a young man who is in college today was to hang themselves and they wouldn't even talk to anybody about their gambling addiction, we are simply going to attribute that death to something else that has nothing to do with gambling. And the banks or the people they owe money to, they don't even know it. Unless if you come up and say, I have a problem, I don't care what you're saying, this is what I'm suffering, this is what I'm going through, we are still going to face this challenge. So you can actually see that I'm making a huge impact underground. But if I try to take the message to the mainstream, people hesitate to openly come out. They would rather go through the back door and say, I'm here, I need help. Can you help me? But how are we going to spread this message? Because I'm only one person. If you imagine if we had 1,000 people who are doing the same thing that I'm doing, obviously, it's going to make a lot more impact. Because 20 million is not a lot of people. Do you know that 20 million is actually less than the state of Florida in the USA? Just one state. Florida right now has 23 million people. Zambia has only 20 million. And Lagos, the Lagos in Nigeria, it has more people than Zambia. If gambling addiction is actually a problem in Zambia, it means that it's going to affect a lot of people on a scale of massive and epic proportions. That is the reason why we need to sort this issue out immediately. Because if we don't do that, we are going to raise the next generation of junkies and addicts, people who are in offices, a bank CEO who wipe out the entire salary account for workers. And we are going to ask ourselves this very particular question: how did we let this happen?
Wow, how did we let this happen? So now, what would you propose for young people to do?
I get so emotional about this because you will notice that most of the times, young people were supposed to spearhead these issues at the forefront of actually killing these agendas. For you to understand something, you have to harness the knowledge that you have. Gambling is not something that you just take for granted and say, yeah, it's been happening. It's easy to quit. Judging from the way I suffered and came to a point where I actually opened my eyes, it took a unified approach, spiritually, intellectually, to even scientifically, to actually come up to a point where I say, this is nonsense. So for youths to make an impact, they have to identify the root cause, not the effects. Because most people who come to me, they say, if I was just to get a little bit of money and clear my debt, I'll be out of this problem. That's not the problem. The problem is not the date that you have accumulated. The problem is the gambling addiction that you have. Because if I was to give you that money, you get a clean slate. The next day, you're going to go back to the same thing that's giving you problems, and you're going to be in the same position that you were in the previous day. So for youths to actually do something about this, they need to wake up. They need to call it as it is. And they need to push themselves to a position where they can advocate for it. Whether you are an addict or not, have a responsibility because you're a stakeholder. Why do I say this? For every gambling addict, 6 to 10 people are affected by their addiction. How? You, as an innocent youth, you are going to go for work on a particular Monday, and you're going to find out that your accountant, who is responsible for dispersing your salaries at the end of the month, has wiped out the salary account, and you have no food on the table to feed your family. It's just one way that is affecting you. You, as a youth, even if you're not addicted, you're going to find out that the manager has sold the company to chase his or her losses, and you're going to find yourself out of a job, even though you had nothing to do with it. So you have to take a unified solution. That is the reason why I advocate for responsible gambling, but it doesn't fully fall on the shoulders of the person who is wagering and losing money. It involves legislation, it involves the youths, it involves church leaders, it involves mom and dad, it involves your friend, it involves even the gambling entities themselves, because they have more responsibility to make sure that they are promoting responsible marketing, not responsible gambling. Because we're also looking at kids, underage kids who are experiencing this when they're trying to change their channel to watch a cartoon. They see Bet Power, Betway, 1xBet. Where are we going? So we need to call it as it is. It's not just about the money. Money is not the only important thing in this lifetime. Yes, all right, quite all right. You're making a lot of money, but you have to understand profitability at what cost. You might be making money, but you're destroying the society. So as a youth, you have the responsibility to advocate for this issue, whether you are addicted or not. It's your responsibility, and it's compulsory because it's going to get to you one way or the other. There is no one size fits all solution when it comes to dealing with gambling addiction. Okay? And the reason why I'm saying this is people are different. There are people who find comfort religiously. They'll be gambling addicts, but once they talk to their pastor, they engage in prayers, that's it. They're done. There are people who like to go for therapy. They like to have one-on-one sessions where they cry their eyes out. They're holding a little bit of tissue in their hand. They do whatever it is that they want until they get to a point of restoration. Also, people who find value in focus groups. By focus groups, I mean that particular scene in a movie from Europe or America where somebody is saying, hi, my name is Bob. I was a gambling addict for 30 years. And everybody responds like, hi, Bob. And maybe they have donuts or juice over the table right there. You know, it works for them. As for me, I did everything that was in my power. And gambling addiction actually raised a lot of questions that I didn't know about my life. I stopped taking alcohol. I stopped taking sugar. I stopped going out. I started researching more on the problem and actually asking myself, who am I? What do I represent? What can I improve? And I stopped being on social media anyhow without any purpose. That's the benefit of you getting to a point where you have recovered. But the solution that I always tell people is I'm a brand consultant, so I know the impact of having a niche solution in this case. If you know that you need to see a therapist and you're comfortable seeing a therapist, by all means do that. If you know that you have family support, people who are there to encourage you and pray for you, please make use of that. But you have to know that everybody might root for you to recover from your situation, but ultimately the decision rests with you because we're not with you all the time. And the way gambling is these days, it only takes 5 minutes for you to be triggered. You go and you lock yourself up in the bathroom. Your mother is not going to be there with you in the bathroom, even though you've actually discussed that you're not going to do it. So for you to recover, you have to want it more than anybody else. Your recovery has to be personal. Try all the methods that are out there. But most importantly, don't just come up with a solution to end your gambling addiction. Find out, why is this happening? The information is available on the internet. There are a lot of testimonies, people who are suffering from this, people who have actually used different methods, people who have actually come out of debt. Even the Bible says it. It was there, it is here, and it will be there. It means that what you're going through is not a unique case. Somebody has gone through that, they've actually dealt with it, and have actually changed their life's trajectory. So I don't want to be a motivational speaker or give you a 12-step program, anything that is going to increase my stock. I'm just going to encourage people who are going through the same to try out all the methods that are there. If you're going for therapy, do therapy. If you're looking for support from your family, do that. If you want religiously to get down on your knees and ask God for forgiveness and change your life for the better, then do that. If it works out, then it works out. If it doesn't, then you should change the strategy. And one thing people have to understand is recovery is not a pristine process, because I've seen the way people project themselves. They say that I'm not going to gamble anymore. They go for 30 days without gambling, and then they relapse. They will think that the 29 days or the 30 days they have been gamble free have gone to waste just for one day. So mentally, you have to be prepared. I'm starting this journey. I know that there are a lot of stumbling blocks along the way. I know that I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but ultimately, I'm going to get to a place of redemption. That's my solution. Mentally, you have to be prepared. It's going to be painful. There's no shortcut. So mentally, accommodate those blocks along.
What support would you require from the public, people listening to you?
I don't want to take it as if I am the messiah of this. No. If somebody can see, listen to my interview, maybe they're going through the same and decide to actually quit gambling and also promote advocacy, the more the merrier. That's my approach. But if somebody sees my article maybe on LinkedIn, they share with a friend, then I think it works in favor of the algorithm, because with each and every application that is on the internet, there's an algorithm. You see how most of these applications are interconnected. You're looking for maybe some baby products, you're shopping on eBay. The next thing you see a page which sells baby clothes on Facebook on your feed. You ask yourself, how did they know that I'm looking for baby products? So when you share my interview, you share my post, you share my work, it's going to be in someone else's feed who might be looking for the same help, but they didn't know where to go. Because that's one of the problems in Zambia. People have a problem, but to find people who can specifically help them immediately, there's nowhere to go. I want more people to join me on this journey so that they can talk about their stories from their own perspectives. When we do that, we are going to solve this issue. Because if I'm alone, I might not suffice in terms of my efforts, but if we are many, we can achieve together. So I think that's what I really appreciate.
Are you aware of any maybe government, any political policy direction which is working towards, regulating some of these gambling companies in Zambia? Are you aware of any since you started?
To give you a backdrop of the gambling industry in Zambia, you have to understand that the reason why we're failing to deal with this problem is because our laws, which were put in place to deal with the gambling industries, didn't expect that gambling was going to grow exponentially or as it has become now. It's the first problem. The laws are there, but they do not suffice. In terms of policy regulation, as far as my research is concerned, I haven't seen anybody, but I've seen people, a few celebrities who have actually helped in their own way in advocating for better marketing strategies from an operator's perspective. I've also engaged with a few people. Actually, my last interview was someone who was deeply invested in this. The absence of a robust organization which promotes responsible gambling and which actually regulates online gambling has really made it difficult for it to be controlled. I'm benchmarking this with other countries like the UK, the USA, where they have promoted and actually implemented vigorous solutions, licensing, and actually regulating the gambling entities and telling them to invest into education and programs which raise awareness and education when it comes to gambling addiction. It's actually a fund which was created. If you are responsible for the damage that is being caused in communities, you also have to be responsible for making sure that people are educated and they know what they're getting themselves into. But the status quo of the Zambian gambling industry, I have to compare it with ExxonMobil, one of the biggest oil companies in the world in the 90s or 80s, where they quickly dismiss the effects and they don't want to invest into educating the people so that they know and make sound decisions with their money. Why is this important? A healthy customer is a profitable customer. But in the context of gambling, a huge chunk of the profits come from addicts. Did you know that? So,
No.
yes, a huge chunk, the business model is built on people losing money. For a gambling company to make money, somebody has to lose.
Mm.
So between 2023 and 2024 in the UK, 86% of the profits, I stand corrected, as 86% of the profits came from 10% of the gambling population. And who are the gambling population? The addicts themselves. So on the side of the operator, a gambling addict is actually a very important person. Why? Because they bring in a lot of money. But you need somebody who is healthy in the long term, who actually practices responsible gambling, not somebody who misuses money and they gamble anyhow, because ultimately you're going to lose that customer one way or the other. They are going to stop gambling whether they like it or not. They're going to die, they're going to be broke, and you're not going to have a customer at the end of the day. So in terms of regulation, it hasn't been as strong as we want it to be. Why? Because still we have to go back to the fact that we are saying it's actually a foreign topic right now. It's not something that has created an urgency. We know the effects that it has caused. And for you to come to policy changes and policy makers like the government, a government is like an elephant. When it makes a big move, it takes its time, but that move is going to be impactful. So when you go to the member of parliament or to the president or to the minister, you don't go there based on a hunch and say, oh, well, I've lost a lot of money and I need you to change this. It doesn't work like that. You need to have data because government changes policies based on the data and what is coming from the people. If more people are being recorded dying from suicide as a result of gambling addiction, and we say to the minister, 100 people died because of gambling addiction, that's when they'll take action. But if there is no organization whatsoever which is recording this, how do you expect people to change regulations? So they also have to make a consultation, go into the field, into the streets, and talk to people what is happening. When you find that information, that's when you can make policy change or regulation change. So that is the biggest problem that we have right now. And I identified information as a gap that is actually causing this whole confusion. There is no information which is readily available. And that is the reason why I created Fresh Start, helping people to recover by giving them information, but also gathering information that is vital at the end of the day to present to people who are going to make these changes.
What kind of Africa do you want to see?
The kind of Africa that I want to see is a continent that knows its value, continent that develops based on culture importation, not information importation, not anything that comes as a trend from any other continent, but developing each and every sector based on our narratives, which resonate with our people. Whether you're Nigerian, whether you're from Gambia, whether you're from Zambia, whether you're from Ghana, you are African. You don't know your value, it's very easy for somebody to come through a riffraff and just tell you what to do. Africa is blessed. Resource-wise, we have the people, we have the skills, we have the energy, we have the stamina. But if you don't believe in your true value, what kind of equity do you have in terms of your brand? Because I'm a brand consultant, so I know what it means. I don't need anybody to tell me what I am already. So you'd find that different age groups, especially the Gen Zs, they're easily convinced by culture importation. Can you actually believe that our own culture in Zambia, we wear what we call chitenge? I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's actually a material that you make. In Zambia, we wear this chitenge because it's part of our tradition and culture. But the chitenge is being made in China and it's being imported into this country. How can we let other people from other continents make what we should be proud of and making and exporting to other people? So Africa needs to identify its identity. Who are we? Where are we going? What do we want? And when we sit at the table, we have an agenda. If somebody's coming through and they have a different proposal that is not aligning to our values as a people, it's very easy to make a choice. It's a no-brainer. But it has to start with the fact that you need to know your identity as an African. Who are you? We have been affected so much by colonialism, and it has changed the perception and the way we think. We think ourselves as playing second fiddle all the time. No. You have to claim your stake and you have to take your chair if you want to sit at the table and play with the big boys. So I reached out to somebody who is in the media fraternity right here in Zambia, a journalist, by the way. And I actually proposed a meeting just to sit down and discuss the status quo of gambling addiction in Zambia. I was shocked and appalled. Somebody who is supposed to take a stance which is unbiased, saying that gambling addiction is a foreign thing. These guys, they're big and you can't fight them. And I'm thinking to myself, you spent 4 to 5 years in university studying for a bachelor in mass communication journalism, and you're scared to represent and actually tackle the issues that are destroying your continent? Because by the year 2030, the gambling industry in Africa is expected to boom between 25 billion to 30 billion. Did you know about that? Where is the money coming from? It's coming out of the poor people of Africa. How are we going to alleviate poverty? How are we going to save our people if the educated people are the most coward? I didn't go to university so that I can sit and keep my mouth shut about issues that are affecting our youths. I got educated so that I can use my skills. I know what I'm supposed to do and I'm playing my role. That's what Africa needs to do. You need to identify your identity first and know who you are as a continent, as a people, and you can discuss from there.
Wow, you are really getting me very emotional, and I'm so happy that we decided to cover this story now.
hope you are inspired, because we are. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to all our social media channels. It's displayed on the screen, and don't forget to press that notification bell to receive updates when they come by.
It's Visa. Visa with